What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you with another solo video. Today, we are going through the week 3 matchup by matchup, start sit decisions that you are going to be facing this week. We're going to go through every game, every position, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, talking about who you should start, who you should sit, maybe if you should pick up a certain guy on waivers, if you should drop a certain guy because he's no longer usable, talking to you, Rob Gronkowski, all that kind of stuff. So before we get into this, if at any point in this video you guys feel like you received some value, maybe you got a conundrum answered about who you should start and who you should sit, hit the button that looks like this. Comment any of your start-sit questions down below. We will be going live before Thursday Night Football and before Sunday's main slate of games if you want to ask any questions specifically there and maybe get more of a personalized approach to that. And then also subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the bell icon because we post videos pretty much every day, as well as going live. You want to be notified when we go live as well. So we're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into this. All right, so we're going to start it off with Dolphins at Jaguars, probably one of the most Thursday Night Football games of all time, but I'm actually kind of excited for it because I like these two quarterbacks. They both are kind of brash personalities, and it's kind of fun. So Gardner Minshew, start him because he's had two back-to-back games where not only has he had good volume and good fantasy numbers, he's looked good too, just as an NFL quarterback, and he's entering must-start territory. If he keeps playing the way he does, we've seen two different sides to Gardner Minshew thus far. In week 1, we saw him be efficient on low volume, which I didn't think we would see at all this year. And then in week 2, it was the opposite, where we kind of just saw him throw the ball like crazy, and he had a pretty solid game regardless. So Fitzpatrick also in this game is a viable streamer over guys like, I would play Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game over guys like Jared Goff, over guys like Mitch Trubisky, over guys like Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Teddy Bridgewater. The Jags defense got absolutely shredded by Ryan Tannehill, and I expect that to be a kind of a trend all season. From the running back position in this game, Myles Gaskin is a starting running back, whether we like it or not, and he's in a relatively smash spot against the Jags defense, so I think you can fire him up as a flex option and a borderline top 30 running back in this game. If on the screen right now, you'll see Myles Gaskin's kind of efficiency metrics as well as his snap share, 64.2% of the snaps, a 2.66 efficiency rating, 1.44 yards over expected per attempt, 5.4 yards per carry, 69 yards after the catch. Like, he's actually been pretty good. And I know it's the Dolphins running backs, but I mean, he's a starting running back in a good matchup. So I think you can play him. As far as James Robinson goes, he's a weekly starter officially. I'm slightly lower on him than consensus because I don't know why the consensus has him as like an RB19 or whatever, which I don't think he's that high up yet. But he's still RB24 for me on the week after a 19-touch game where he looked relatively explosive in that game. And he's 4th among rookie running backs in snaps. He had a 54% snap share, which was only behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, and Antonio Gibson, who I'll get to later. But, yeah, James Robinson, you can fire him up. From the wide receiver position, DJ Chark, you start him. You can flex Laviska Shenault, and I say you can emergency flex Keelan Cole as well. From the Dolphins' perspective, you start Devontae Parker and you sit Preston Williams. As far as DJ Chark goes, I know a lot of people are probably concerned, myself included, because I do own a lot of DJ Chark. I was very high on him. He was one of my guys coming into the season. The Jaguars' wide receiver and target share snaps are as follows on here. DJ Chark is the clear number 1 guy. He's on the field the most. He's just not getting the targets. I don't think this is going to continue. I think he's eventually just going to get targets. Like, he is the number 1 guy. He is a buy low. He still looks great. It's not like he's playing bad or anything. He's just not getting targeted for whatever reason. And that should change as Minshew and all these new pieces kind of come together and gel more. They're going to realize DJ Chark is the best guy on the team. So Laviska Shenault, in my opinion, just rest of season and in general, Laviska Shenault over Keelan Cole all day. The snaps are close, and Viska's just way too good and way too versatile not to take over the number 2 role from Keelan Cole, who currently kind of has it. I would not be wasting waiver wire money on Keelan Cole. I think you can emergency flex him this week, but I think as the season goes on, maybe even starting this week, Laviska Shenault is going to take over the number 2 receiver role from him. And they're both, I mean, you can both start them as like wide receiver 4s or 5s in this week. The matchups are as follows. DJ Chark seeing a lot of Byron Jones, who I don't know if he's going to play or not. If he doesn't play, he'll probably see a lot of Xavier Howard. Either way, I think DJ Chark is good enough to bounce back and have a decent game against whoever it is. And then, as you can see, Nick Needham against Keelan Cole. That's why I say you can emergency flex him, is because Nick Needham isn't very good. And then Chenault should see a lot of Noah Igbenogany if Byron Jones is out. So from the Dolphins' perspective, Parker should bounce back after playing probably the 2 best corners in the league in shadow coverage the past 2 weeks that he's played. He's going to be facing CJ Henderson, according to PFF, in shadow coverage this week, but that's way easier than playing Stephon Gilmore and Tre'Davious White, who he's played the last 2 weeks. Preston Williams is a sit until further notice. I mean, like, his ACL recovery is clearly not going well. He doesn't look like the same player. He looked explosive last year. He looked like just every bit as good as Devontae Parker looked. This year, he doesn't look good. He's dropping passes. He doesn't look explosive. And on top of that, like Mike Gesicki is out targeting him. Like, I just don't want anything to do with Preston Williams right now. I'm going to hold on to him. Don't drop him or anything, but I don't want to start him personally. Tight end wise, start Mike Gesicki. I was wrong, obviously. He had a bonker stat line in week 2, and I said to sit him because, and this is my fault, what I failed to realize is that he's basically a slot receiver and not a tight end. So he did not see a lot of Jordan Poyer, who is an absolutely amazing coverage guy on tight ends. And he obviously avoided that because he plays most of his snaps from the slot. As far as Tyler Eifert on the Jags side, I think you could stream him. He's get 6 targets and a touchdown last week, which makes him streamable. It's pretty much all you can hope for, like 30 yards and a touchdown for Tyler Eifert. If you're in a pinch, I guess you could stream him, but there's probably way better options out there that you can play. So on to Sunday's games. 49ers at Giants. This is a battle of the injured teams, pretty much. Quarterback-wise, you don't play the Niners quarterbacks, even though it's a good matchup against the Giants. Whoever plays quarterback for the Niners, Jimmy G or Nick Mullins, you sit them both. Daniel Jones, I think you can stream. There's no, as far as the Niners quarterbacks, there's no weapons for the 49ers. So even if they win, it's probably going to be because of the run game. I don't think the Jimmy G or Mullins is going to have like a 3-touchdown performance throwing a fucking whoever the hell they have there right now, Brandon Ayuk and Kendrick Bourne. Daniel Jones had a bad week last week, but without Saquon going forward, he should be in the position to throw the ball quite a lot, which they've already done, actually. Running back wise, Jerick McKinnon, fire him the hell up. It's and then on the Giants side, I'm sitting all of them. All the Giants running backs that are not Saquon Barkley, obviously, because he's out. I'm sitting all of them. I think it's a tale of 2 situations here between these 2 backfields. I know McKinnon's getting the bulk of the work for the Niners, so he's my start of the week at running back. And the other 2 guys are my sit of the week at running back because I have no clue who to start between Freeman, Dion Lewis, Wayne Gallman. Like, I have no clue. So I'm at, like, this is a full-blown committee in New York. I have no idea what's going to happen. We're going to have to see it play out. So I don't want to be starting Devontae Freeman because he just got there. He's probably going to have to take COVID tests. He might not even play in this game. Dion Lewis, like, he had a lot of snaps last week, but he looked like crap. So I don't really want to start him either. And then Wayne Gallman, who can carry a full workload, and we've seen him do it in Saquon's absence last year, but he's not very good either. And this is not a great offense. It's not a great offensive line. I just don't want anything to do with this backfield. I hope you didn't waste like a crap ton of money on this backfield like some people did. That was fool's gold in my opinion. So wide receiver wise, my start of the week at wide receiver is Darius Slayton. And Golden Tate, I believe you can flex in this game. And then I'd say you could emergency flex Brandon Ayuk as well. Slayton versus whoever the Niners are going to throw at him is not going to end very well because Richard Sherman is on IR, on top of the fact that the 49ers once feared front of Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Dee Ford and all these guys, they're all injured now. Like, the front is decimated, and DJ should have plenty of time to find his number 1 guy in Darius Slayton. And I also think Golden Tate can be played as well. He's a flex given that the Giants are number 1 in the NFL in neutral game script passing percentage at 61%. So when they're in a game, they're not losing or winning. It's kind of just a close game. They throw the ball the most in the NFL. And they just lost their run game in Saquon Barkley. So it's probably not going to go down from here. On the screen right now, you'll see the matchups, the cornerback matchups. As you can see, Darius Slayton expected on Emmanuel Mosley. It's not going to end well for him. And then Kwan Williams on Golden Tate. I mean, Kwan Williams is okay, but like, I think Golden Tate can rack up some catches. Brandon Ayuk, he didn't see a crazy amount of volume in his NFL debut, but he saw a 71% snap share, and someone's going to have to catch it for the Niners. In a pinch, I think you can flex him, but I don't really want to use him at all, to be honest. From the tight end position, I think you could stream Jordan Reed as long as George Kittle is out. We saw 8 targets and 2 touchdowns from George Kittle's backup, making him a streaming candidate as long as he's out. Evan Ingram is now the number 2 in this offense and potentially even the number 1. He played almost 100% of the snaps last week and in week 1 as well. And with Barkley out now on a high volume passing offense, as I mentioned, if he could stay healthy, he's going to be great this season. Obviously, that's been the case with Evan Ingram his entire career, but especially this year without Barkley and them throwing as much as they have been, he's going to be really good. And he's gotten a lot of targets in the past couple of weeks that he's played. So Washington at Browns, on to the next game. Never start Dwayne Haskins. I know he looks a little bit better this year, but he's still not good. So Baker Mayfield, I would also sit Baker Mayfield as well. I think the Browns line, although it does look improved, and Jedrick Wills is looking really good, to be honest, it still has a lot of new pieces, and it might be outmatched by this Washington front. There's probably only like a couple offensive lines in the league that I don't think is going to be outmatched by Washington's front this year. So that's more a compliment to Washington's front than it is a detriment to Cleveland's line, because it does look a lot better than it did last year. Plus, in general, Baker's just a low upside weekly play anyways due to volume. I don't think he's throwing more than 35 pass attempts like 3 times this year. Like, I think he's probably going to be within 20 to 28 pass attempts every game. And with that, like, Baker's not like Russell Wilson. He's not going to just like have a super efficient game every week because he's so good. Like, he's kind of just like an average quarterback at this point. So unless he gets high volume, he's probably not going to be that good. From the running back position in this game, Antonio Gibson's my start of the week at the running back position, mainly because he leads the league in forced missed tackles among running backs with 20 combined carries and receptions. He is ahead of guys like Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, Zeke Elliott, Austin Eckler. Like, everyone in the league is behind Antonio Gibson on forced missed tackles per attempt. From the Browns, actually, I'll keep going on Gibson. I actually tweeted this out a couple days ago. Of the snap share that he played in Washington. He played 65.15% of the snaps, which is obviously way different than what happened in week 1 with Peyton Barber playing like all the snaps and getting 17 carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 22 passing snaps, which I think was pretty intriguing, thinking that when I was watching the game, it looked like J.D. McKissic was the third down back, but 22 passing snaps to 13 means that Antonio Gibson is the primary passing down back as well. And 18 of those 22 were routes, meaning he was only in protection on 4 of them, while as McKissick's 13, 8 of his 13 were routes, meaning he was in protection for more of his. Gibson, at the time I tweeted this out, the Monday Night Football game hadn't been played, so he is now first, but I said he had ranked 3rd among running backs with minimum 10 carries and receptions on tackles avoided per attempt at 36%, which is basically what Ian Hartz tweeted out, but I just got there first. But I think you're going to be able to start this dude more often than not. I think he's RB20 on the week for me, and I think he's just going to continue to get better going forward. He had 11 touches in week 1. He had 15 touches last week. I think he's just going to continue to go up until he gets around that 20-touch range. And he's an explosive dude. He is so fast. He's so athletic. He can take anything to the house. And I know it's not a great offense, but if he's catching, as I mentioned in the offseason, if he's catching 5-6 passes a game and getting like 12 to 14 carries, he's going to be fantasy viable with as good as he is. So from the Browns' perspective, Chubb and Hunt obviously take a hit this week instead of going against the Bengals' run defense, which they just ran all over last week. They go to Washington, which is a much better run defense than Cincinnati. Personally, on Kareem, obviously you start Chubb every week, but personally on Kareem Hunt, I mean, I don't think he's a must start this week. I know everyone's going to start him because he had an awesome week last week, but I think Kareem Hunt's kind of a sell candidate for me. I think I would sell him for someone like Antonio Gibson right now if I could, and I think you can, because in most home leagues, people are going to look at Kareem Hunt had like a 25-point week last week and be like, oh yeah, I'll give you Antonio Gibson for Kareem Hunt. Like, no problem. I think in the long term, even as early as this week, that's going to work itself out. And Antonio Gibson's going to be way more valuable than Kareem Hunt. So your window to buy Antonio Gibson is going to close after this week, in my opinion. From the wide receiver perspective, you start Terry McLaurin every week. You start Odell probably every week for the most part. And Jarvis Landry, I think you can flex him in this game, but he hasn't looked particularly great to start the season. The shadow matchups came out shortly after I was done writing all this up. So it does look like Denzel Ward is going to shadow AJ Green. even though, or sorry, he's going to shadow Terry McLaurin because he shadowed AJ Green last week. So I think Terry McLaurin is good enough to beat Denzel Ward. So it doesn't really bother me too much. From the Browns' perspective, both Browns receivers should have a decent game, as Washington's defense, as I mentioned, is more susceptible to the pass than the run. They've been really good against the run and not so good against the pass. So I think even though the Browns are fairly committed to running the ball, as Kevin Stefanski often does, I think, and they do it really well at that, I think the passing volume does improve a little bit from last week, where they just pretty much just didn't even let Baker throw it because they were running the ball all over Cincinnati. The Browns receiver matchups are as follows. Odell going up against Fabian Moreau, who's actually had a pretty decent start to the season so far. And then Jarvis Landry going up against Jimmy Moreland, who's a second-year corner, 7th-round pick out of James Madison, I believe. So Jarvis Landry should get back on track in this game, and if he doesn't, I think that's really concerning. Tight end-wise, Logan Thomas, you can stream. Both tight ends don't really have that good of matchups this week, but according to PFF, Thomas is like a streamable option because he had 9 targets last week. He still had 9 targets, even though he didn't really have a good game. Austin Hooper is in a low-volume passing offense, and he is like the 4th option as a receiver. So no thanks on Austin Hooper. I think he's borderline droppable at this point. He's my sit of the week at the tight end position. Onto the Bengals at Eagles. Quarterback Joe Burrow is my start of the week at the quarterback position, and Wentz, I believe you can stream in this game. Burrow's my start of the week going up against a defense that is dead last in defensive DVOA and 31st in net yards per attempt through 2 weeks, despite playing against Dwayne Haskins and Jared Goff. So the Eagles' defense has looked like trash, and it's not because they played against Mahomes and Lamar Jackson like the Houston Texans defense, for example. Neither team can stop anyone on defense. And although there's a chance that Miles Sanders just absolutely runs hog wild in this game, and Wentz doesn't get many touchdowns, I still think Wentz can have a good game because the Bengals defense isn't very good either. If faced with the choice, I would start Burrow over Wentz in this game, and I'd also start guys like Minshew, Tannehill, a couple other guys over Wentz as well. I think Wentz is more of like a quarterback 18 this week, and I have Burrow at quarterback 15. So that's just kind of the relative range I have those guys. Running back-wise, you start them both, Sanders and Mixon. Mixon's getting a little bit worrisome as a fantasy asset, but he is virtually guaranteed 20 opportunities per week. Obviously, we just hope that Gio Bernard goes away on the goal line and in the receiving game, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think this is why I was off Joe Mixon, was because I expected Gio Bernard to be involved, and I didn't see the top 5 upside that everyone saw for Joe Mixon. Everyone was like, oh, he could catch 65 passes. I'm like, that's not going to happen because Gio Bernard's still there. So from the Sanders perspective, he stepped into the role that everyone hoped he would this past offseason when we were all gassing him up as this like first-round running back. He saw 77% of snaps, 27 opportunities, including 7 targets, a 71% route rate, and he's a locked and loaded RB1 going forward as far as I'm concerned. If he could stay healthy, he's going to be awesome this year. From the wide receiver perspective in this game, AJ Green and Tyler Boyd, I believe you can flex them both. Maybe start Boyd and flex Green. Deshaun Jackson, I think you can start in this game, and I would sit Jalen Reagor. Green still had 13 targets, so I'll start him against the Eagles because that's a lot of volume, and it's a garbage pass defense. But it is worth noting that Darius Slay absolutely locked down Robert Woods last week, and he is projected to shadow AJ Green. So, I mean, Green probably won't have too effective of a game, but if the volume is there, he'll probably still have a couple catches and maybe catches a touchdown and saves you. Boyd, I think, has the best matchup of the 2 receivers, obviously. He's locked and loaded starter. I would take him if I had both Bengals receivers, I would start Boyd over Green because Green is going to get shadowed by Darius Slay. As you can see in the cornerback matchup, they have Green on Slay and Boyd on Nickel Roby-Coleman, who has the highest advantage on the week. T. Higgins is someone you're going to need to keep on waiver wire speed dial because if AJ Green looked anything like he did on Thursday night, T. Higgins is going to get more and more playing time. From the Eagles' perspective, Reagor hasn't really looked the greatest in terms of just like talent-wise, nor has Carson Wentz for that matter. But Deshaun Jackson is amongst the NFL leaders in air yards, so I'll definitely start him. But that's pretty much it for wide receivers. Deshaun Jackson going up against Darius Phillips, I think that's probably a smash matchup, unless we see anything otherwise about him being shadowed by William Jackson, which I don't think is going to happen because I don't really use William Jackson against kind of average receivers like Deshaun Jackson. So tight end wise, Drew Sample is a streamable option. You saw he was thrust into the starting role after CJ Uzomah went down, and he got 9 targets and a decent snap share. So, and he's a former 2nd-round pick, so he's obviously got some talent to him. I think he's going to be streamable weekly. especially in this game where the Eagles just can't cover anyone. So I think this is going to be a relatively high-scoring game. So I think a lot of these options should be startable. Both tight ends for the Eagles, obviously, you start them both. I think they're startable every week. And Goddard and Ertz should be about top 12 options each this week. So on to the next game, which is the Raiders and the Patriots. You do not start Derek Carr. I know he had a good game against New Orleans, but I don't think he's going to do it 2 weeks in a row. Cam, you start. I mean, he's playing out of his mind right now. Even though they didn't win that game, he played awesome. Cam is my quarterback 6 on the week, as he is probably sure to run right through the spongy ass Raiders defense and carve up their pass defense in the passing game in a way that Drew Brees' noodle-ass arm couldn't do last week because he's clearly washed up. Running back wise, you start Josh Jacobs. Jacobs is one of the few running backs in the NFL this year with McCaffrey and Barkley going down that has a chance to finish as the number 1 running back in fantasy. So that's how highly I think of Jacobs going forward. And never, ever, ever start a Patriots running back because Rex Burkhead led the Pats in snaps and opportunities this past week with James White out. Prayers up to James White. Obviously, with the tragic loss of his father, and I haven't seen any updates on his mother, but apparently she's in critical condition as well. So definitely prayers up to James White. But I don't want to start any of these dudes in this backfield ever, to be honest, because I think it's just week over week. It's going to be Sony Michel 1 week, Rex Burkhead 1 week, James White the next week. Like it's not worth the headache because it's not that great of a rushing offense anyway. Wide receiver wise, my sit of the week is both of the Raiders wide receivers, Ruggs and Edwards. One thing I'd like to say for Henry Ruggs is all the people that dismissed the fact that Ruggs had air yards in this game were there because he had a missed touchdown by Derek Carr and a pass interference penalty that was drawn by him are the same people that are holding on to pre-draft takes about Henry Ruggs and will turn around and use the air yards argument for guys like Deshaun Jackson and guys like Curtis Samuel. So if you don't use the air yards argument for Ruggs, you can't use it for other people. You just got to be consistent. And that being said, you can't start Ruggs in this game. You just absolutely cannot start him. Until this rough patch of his schedule is over, I don't think you can start Edwards either. After these next 2 weeks with New England and Buffalo, I think that's when you're going to be able to start these guys against Kansas City and going forward. Here's the matchups that they have. Bryan Edwards is actually supposedly going to be shadowed by Stephon Gilmore, which, I mean, he's just absolutely not startable at all. Henry Ruggs against J.C. Jackson, that's also not a great matchup. As far as the New England side, Edelman proved to be exactly what we all thought, a target monster, so fire him up. 85% of the snaps and 12 targets. Okay, N'Keal Harry, nice. He was in my video on must-draft second-year receivers pre-drafts, and he's looking like the number 2 in this offense. As far as their matchups, Julian Edelman going up against LaMarcus Joyner should be advantage Edelman, and N'Keal Harry against Trayvon Mullen, that should be a good battle. We'll see how Harry handles that. Trayvon Mullen, I think, is kind of underrated as a corner. I think he's actually not that bad. And then tight end wise for this matchup, like Darren Waller is the target hierarchy in Las Vegas is Darren Waller, everyone else. Like Darren Waller is the guy there. Don't worry about all these dudes taking away targets from him because they're not. It's Darren Waller's passing offense. They're just living in it. And then never start a Patriots tight end, basically. So on to the Bears at the Falcons. At the quarterback position, I think you definitely start Matt Ryan every week, and I think you can stream Trubisky in this game. I can't even imagine sitting Matt Ryan, to be honest, with the amount of throws and pass attempts that this team is going to have this year. Like, the defense can't stop anyone. They're just going to throw the ball to win. That's their only option, really, because they can't run the ball either. Trubisky is a viable streamer because this Falcons pass defense, as I just mentioned, is hot garbage. It's terrible. And literally anyone with a pulse can throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against it. And we've actually seen Mitch Trubisky in general has been a pretty predictable streamer. When you think you can stream Trubisky, it's usually true because he usually just plays good against bad pass defenses like the Lions and the Buccaneers a couple years ago. Like, he usually just does well against bad pass defenses. So I think you can fire him up as like a top 20 option in this week. But don't watch the game because he's terrible as a real life quarterback. Running back wise, I think you definitely can start Montgomery probably this week and every week going forward. I'd be sitting Tariq Cohen in this game, even though it's going to be probably pretty high scoring. And I think you flex Todd Gurley because, I mean, Gurley sucks, but he's going to get his volume. So he's a low end RB2. We already saw him lose his pass catching role already in week 2 though. So he's not getting any more targets, I'd imagine, or at least not a lot of targets. Montgomery-wise, he saw 19 opportunities, which isn't new for him. He generally sees like pretty solid volume, but he saw 3 targets, and he actually looked pretty explosive on them. So I think he sees an upgrade just from the fact that he looks better this year into firm RB2 territory for me. I think he's in that RB 18 to 24 range based on whatever team he's playing, along with guys like David Johnson and Todd Gurley. I think he's kind of in that range with those guys. I think his emergence downgrades Tariq Cohen, in my opinion, because you just never know when to start Tariq Cohen. And yes, this is a typical matchup when you'd be like, oh, I think you can start Tariq Cohen in this game, but he'll probably go out and have fucking 2 targets for 5 yards. Like, Tariq Cohen is so inconsistent. I never want to own a guy like him on my team. Like, even him, James White, like Nyheim Hines, like all of these guys, I don't want to own them because you never know when to start these dudes. Wide receiver wise in this game, you start the top 3: Allen Robinson, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. You fire them up with no worries. I think you can also flex the tertiary guys, Russell Gage and Anthony Miller in this game. The wide receiver cornerback matchups just don't even matter for this game because despite the Bears corners showing something, they can't hang with the Atlanta passing attack. I don't care who Ridley has in coverage. I don't care who Julio has in coverage. They're going to torch them. Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller are both solid plays as well. If A-Rob doesn't perform this week, though, I am very worried because Allen Robinson hasn't really performed thus far in the season, but this is the game. This is his get-right game. So if he doesn't perform in this game, I'm a little concerned, and you should probably start shopping Allen Robinson. Tight end-wise, absolutely disgusting to start Jimmy Graham, but I think you can do it in a pinch. It should be a high-scoring game, so maybe Jimmy Graham catches a touchdown, but it's gross as hell. Hayden Hurst might be my favorite sell-high candidate right now. I know I liked Hayden Hurst pre-draft, but I've kind of pivoted a little bit on Hayden Hurst because I think if you can get Gesicki, Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith, I would for Hayden Hurst because he's one broken play away from being absolutely useless these first 2 weeks. And I think with Gage stepping up the way he has, I think he's going to emerge as the more consistent number 3 in this offense. And I think Hayden Hurst is going to be relatively inconsistent. So if you can, as I mentioned, if you can get Gesicki, Fant, Hawkinson, Jonnu, maybe even like higher options like Hunter Henry, if you want to pair Hurst with someone, like I think it's worth it because I think Hurst is going to be a boom or bust option and maybe even more so bust than boom most of the time. So from the next game, Los Angeles Rams at the Buffalo Bills. Jared Goff is my sit of the week at quarterback. You absolutely do not play him against this Bills defense. And Josh Allen's an every week start based on the way he's playing. Josh Allen may have taken a step as a passer, folks. Like we'll find out in this game because the Rams are actually a respectable pass defense, unlike the Jets and the Dolphins that he's played the last 2 weeks. The Rams actually held the Cowboys passing game in check, and Josh Allen, if he's able to perform in this game, he might be on track to finish as like a top 3 quarterback if he indeed took a step in the passing game, as I think he looks like he has. Not a chance, though, I start Jared Goff against a top 5 pass defense. Goff is completely matchup dependent streamer. So in this game, you don't start him because it's a bad matchup. Running back wise, I don't want to start either of the Rams running backs, to be honest. I would like to sit Brown and Henderson if I can help it. And from the Bills perspective, I think you can flex both of them. But again, like I think you should probably have better options than Zach Moss. So Singletary is really the one I'm more interested in that that Bills backfield. I don't know who to start for the Rams, as I just mentioned, so don't start any of them. If that's your conclusion, you don't know who to start, then don't start any of them. Brown is the guy I would assume I would pick if I had to pick one. If he plays, I think he gets the majority of the work. And if he's out of this game, I'll flex Darrell Henderson, but I expect a committee if they both play, and I don't want to start any of them in that case. I'm willing to flex both the Bills running backs, though, as I mentioned, as I know they're both of their roles are pretty secure. Devin Singletary is the passing down guy. They both get similar carries in the rushing game, and Zach Moss gets the goal line work. So it's pretty obvious who to start in that case. But as I mentioned, I would start Singletary because I think the Rams front is harder to run against than it is to get a pass catching running back out in space now that they lost Corey Littleton. But I'm not overly excited about either of the Bills running backs, as I mentioned. Wide receiver-wise, I think you can start both of the Rams guys, Kupp and Woods, and you can start both of the top 2 Bills receivers as well. Expect the top 2 guys on each team to be downgraded in this game, though, because Tre'Davious White is going to shadow Robert Woods, and Jalen Ramsey is going to shadow Stephon Diggs. So I think the second option or the slot receivers in this matchup will probably have the better games. So Kupp and Smokey Brown will probably have the better games of the each receiver. So just keep that in mind and temper your expectations for guys like Woods and Diggs. I'm not sitting them, but I think they won't have the greatest games in the world. Tight end wise, like the way Tyler Higbee is playing, he's playing every bit as good as he was playing last year, and he's a stud going forward. Dawson Knox, you can sit and probably even drop because he's playing like less snaps than he was in week one, and he hasn't really been effective either. He hasn't looked that good. So I think he's droppable. On to the Texans at the Steelers. This might be a gutty call, but I'm gonna sit Deshaun Watson this week. I think you never sit Deshaun Watson, but I think this is the week to do it. This is the only matchup all season I will sit Deshaun Watson in, because if Will Fuller doesn't play, I am not fucking with this defense, because this is the best defense in the NFL, in my opinion. And Deshaun Watson without Will Fuller spells trouble, because he's going to have to play Superman. He probably will have a couple turnovers in this game. I just don't think he's going to have a very good game in general. From Ben Roethlisberger's perspective, I think you can start him with relative confidence. On Watson, I would play guys like Minshew, Tannehill, Burrow, Brady, Stafford, all over Deshaun Watson this week. If you can pick up any of those guys, if you're feeling really gutty, you could even consider guys like Trubisky, Fitzpatrick, or Justin Herbert in this game, because I don't want to play Deshaun Watson at all. And Ben's looking every bit like the 2018 Ben that we saw last time he was fully healthy. So you can fire him up as a top 8 option in this game against the Texans pass defense that really can't stop anyone. Even though they did, the Texans pass defense low-key kind of held Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes in check relative to Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes standards, but I still think they're not very good. So running back-wise, DJ, you can start. Connor, you can start. We're seeing workhorse usage out of both of these guys, to be honest, and especially for David Johnson, as I'll have up on the screen right now. He's leading the NFL, or he led the NFL in running back snaps played of any running back in the league last week. So as long as David Johnson's healthy, you can't sit him based on volume. The amount of volume he's getting, you just absolutely can't sit him. I can assure you any value he has this week, though, will come as a receiver, because the Steelers just cannot be run on. Melvin Gordon took advantage of him a little bit, but we saw Saquon Barkley get absolutely demoed in week 1 against the Steelers run defense. James Conner, you don't sit him as long as he's healthy either, because he just gets volume. Wide receiver-wise, I think you could start both the Steelers' top receivers. You could start Cooks, and I would sit Fuller whether he plays or not. The reason is because actually, I'll go to the Steelers guys first. Both the Steelers wide receivers look like every week starts, in my opinion. At this point, with Ben playing like Ben, how he has been playing, Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, you just can't sit them. In the matchups this week, they have Deontay Johnson on Bradley Roby, likely being shadowed by him, I think. And Juju Smith-Schuster on Eric Murray. That's not going to end well for either of those guys. Claypool might be the best stash in fantasy, to be honest. Like, if anything ever happens to Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster, he is ready to explode. He is looking like a super efficient player right now, and I think if he gets any more playing time, he's just going to be an awesome fantasy receiver, because he looks like just a great receiver in general. On to the Texans side, low-key, the Steelers defense is looking kind of like a pass funnel, because you absolutely can't run against them, as I mentioned. So I expect Cooks to be a solid target option in this game. If Will Fuller plays, I'm not playing him, as I mentioned, because he's probably going to be either limited and it's just a bad matchup in general. So I don't really want to start Will Fuller if he plays. The projected matchups are as follows, though. Brandon Cooks against Steven Nelson is probably the best matchup on the field, just because Brandon Cooks has actually looked good when he's played. And Will Fuller against Joe Hayden, I don't really want anything to do with that. And then Randall Cobb's kind of just a shitty option, low upside in general, so I don't really want to play him either. Tight end-wise, Jordan Akins, low-key. He got the targets last week, and I know Fells got the touchdown, but Akins is playing over 80% of the snaps for the Texans. So I think you could stream him pretty consistently and with relative confidence based on the amount of snaps that he's playing. Eric Ebron, I think, is a streamable option as well. You kind of just have to hope for a touchdown or a big play out of him. So into the next game, the Titans at the Vikings. So Ryan Tannehill is an absolutely smash start in this game, because the Vikings defense can't stop anyone like short of, like, they couldn't even stop Phillip Rivers last week. That's how you know that they can't stop anyone. You cannot start Kirk Cousins in this matchup. I think Kirk Cousins is droppable. You don't even need to roster him, because there's far too many good options at quarterback this year to be starting a guy whose upside is 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, basically. Because without Diggs, he doesn't have 300-yard, 4-touchdown upside anymore, because Diggs is the deep threat, and you can see how good Diggs is by how he's playing in Buffalo. Like, they miss Diggs, clearly. And until Justin Jefferson becomes Stephon Diggs, which I don't think is ever going to happen, that you can't start Kirk Cousins. Tannehill, on the other hand, continues to put up efficient numbers in good matchups, and I expect that to continue with the Vikings squad that basically forgot how to play defense from last year. They have great players on defense still, with Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks and Yannick Ngakoue, but they just can't play defense right now. Maybe Daniil Hunter needs to come back for them to remember how to play defense, but until further notice, they're one of the best matchups to attack for fantasy receivers and quarterbacks. Running back wise, I'm not giving any analysis on this. Done. Duh. You start Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook every week. Derrick Henry, no, I'm not worried about him because he doesn't have a touchdown. He still leads the league in rushing yards. Wide receiver wise, Corey Davis, I think you could start with relative confidence in this game. As I mentioned, the Vikings corners just suck. On the screen right now, you'll see Corey Davis is going up against rookie Jeff Gladney, and I think he's probably going to make mincemeat of him. Adam Humphries, I think you can emergency flex Adam Humphries without A.J. Brown in the lineup because I think Mike Hughes is who he's projected to go up against, and Adam Humphries is a solid floor play. I don't think he has a huge ceiling, and he's not really sexy of a play, but you saw back in his days in Tampa, you could start him, and he'd actually get you a decent amount of points. And then from the Vikings perspective, you start Adam Thielen, but you don't start anyone else. Tight end wise, I'm going to use the word on Jonnu Smith because don't say I didn't warn y'all, but I mean, this dude's a bad man. Like late round tight end is king for this reason because Jonnu Smith was screaming at you for the breakout. I tweeted this out on Monday, but Jonnu Smith led all Titans skill position players in snaps in week 2, playing 54 out of 62 snaps, which is 87%, which is what George Kittle plays. And in my breakdown of Jonnu Smith in the offseason, I said that when Delaney Walker was out of the lineup, Jonnu Smith played like an 80% snap share, which is holding true thus far. He trails only Corey Davis over the first 2 weeks with 79% of the total snaps of the Titans offense. I'm willing to buy high on Jonnu, as I mentioned, if I didn't already own him everywhere, because I own him in every league that I'm in. I'm in 7 leagues. I own him in 6 because, I mean, I just saw it coming. Like, it seemed so obvious to me. He is my tight end 5 rest of the season. He's awesome going forward. On to the 4 p.m. games. And it seems like the NFL finally figured out that the smart way to do this is not to put 12 games on at 1 p.m. and 3 on at 4. It's to balance it out. So I think we have 5 or 6 games on at 4 p.m. this week, which makes Scott Hansen's job a little bit easier. Doesn't have to stall as much. The Panthers and Chargers are the first game that we have up on the 4 p.m. slate. Bridgewater's a sit. Just don't play him against this Chargers defense. And Herbert's my stream of the week. If Anthony Lynn doesn't start Herbert, he is batshit crazy. If Herbert's the starter, he is the best streamer this week. I would play him over Carson Wentz, as I mentioned, and maybe even Watson if I'm feeling really gutty. But I can't. If Anthony Lynn starts Tyrod Taylor after that performance that a rookie quarterback who had no idea he was going to be playing put out, he is batshit crazy because Tyrod Taylor is not good at all. And Justin Herbert actually made this offense look somewhat exciting. And he reignited Austin Eckler, which I really appreciate. So running back wise, Mike Davis, I think you can flex him in this game. Austin Eckler, I think you can start with relative confidence in this game. And then Josh Kelly, I think you can flex in this game as well. Davis should fill 70% maybe of the volume that CMC got. Not his talent, obviously, but his volume. And he should be viable as a flex starter for the next couple weeks. Around that, Ronald Jones, Myles Gaskin, maybe James Robinson's actually ahead of them. But the Myles Gaskin range is where I see Mike Davis. So hopefully you didn't blow like fucking $50 on him in your of your fab budget. I think he was more of like a $20 pickup that you can start going forward for the next couple of weeks while CMC is out. I think it was great to see Eckler get back to his usual self in the passing game. Hopefully Justin Herbert keeps the starting job and he's able to foster that relationship going forward. As I mentioned last week, Josh Kelly won't be startable every week, but I think this run defense is not good. The Carolina Panthers, and he should be in for a solid 16 to 20 touches in this game, and you should be able to flex him from that perspective. Wide receiver-wise, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, you start every week going forward, in my opinion. Keenan Allen, you start in this game, especially if Justin Herbert's the starter, and Mike Williams, you sit, especially if Justin Herbert's the starter. DJ Moore will likely stay on the outside for this game. It's hard to predict what they're going to do with DJ Moore because if they keep him on the outside, he's going to be shadowed by Casey Hayward, which sounds a lot scarier than it is. Casey Hayward hasn't looked good in the first 2 games of the season, and Chris Harris has. So if they want to move DJ Moore to the slot on Chris Harris, they're probably doing him a disservice because he's probably going to do better against Casey Hayward. Robbie Anderson is like an every week start going forward, as I mentioned. High pass volume. He's the number 2 target in the offense, and now CMC is out. So Robbie Anderson, just going forward, is going to be a startable asset. He should see a lot of Michael Davis, especially while Chris Harris Jr. is in the slot on Curtis Samuel. So I think Robbie Anderson actually has the best matchup on the field in this game, and I think I would definitely start him with relative confidence. Keenan Allen, on the other hand, should be the only guy on the Chargers passing offense that you start in this one. Hopefully Herbert starts, as I mentioned, because it seems that Tyrod Taylor, for whatever reason, favored Mike Williams. On the screen right now, you'll see the passing matchups. Keenan Allen projected to go up against rookie Jeremy Chin in the slot, and that's not going to end well with the way that Keenan Allen runs routes. Mike Williams, as I mentioned, I'm really not interested in starting him because Rasul Douglas has actually looked pretty good in coverage. And I think he'll probably play pretty well against Mike Williams, given that they're both kind of like physical players. Tight end wise, you can drop Ian Thomas. It looks like Rule's offense doesn't feature a tight end, so I think he's droppable and don't even start him, consider him. I'd rather start Jimmy Graham over Ian Thomas in this matchup. Hunter Henry, man. Like Hunter Henry has been the number 2 pass catcher on the team, and he might continue to be. So I think he's just been excellent thus far, and he's received 8 targets in each game. So definitely fire him up with high confidence as like a top 8 tight end. All right, on to the Jets and the Colts. You sit both of the quarterbacks because they're both trash. Rivers in an absolute pinch, but other than that, don't start him. Frank Gore is an emergency flex because, Frank Gore saw 21 carries last week, and the only reason you can emergency flex him is because he saw 21 carries. So I don't want to start him, but I think he's like a top 40 running back this week. Jonathan Taylor is quickly becoming like a top 6 running back in fantasy if he continues to get the workload that he just got. Nyheim Hines is my sit of the week. Do not start Nyheim Hines. Like, surprise, surprise, Nyheim Hines wasn't relevant after week 1. I said he was fool's gold. I said don't waste your waiver wire money on him. He's not going to be good. Jonathan Taylor is the guy in this backfield. JT is a top 6 to 8 running back going forward, as I mentioned, and the snaps reflect that. Jared Smola of Draft Sharks tweeted this out shortly after the game. 67% of the snaps, as well as 28 running back opportunities in this backfield. This is his job. As I mentioned, it's cash. Like Hines is droppable in my opinion, because even if he has a decent game, you flex him the next week and he screws you over. You have no idea when to start him. He's in that Tariq Cohen, James White range where I just don't want him on my team. I'd rather own a guy like Alex Madison, who, if Dalvin Cook goes down, is going to be like a top 10 running back. I don't want any of these pass catching guys because I have no idea when to start them. I think you can float Nyheim Hines out in a trade and see if anyone bites, or you can use him as like a sweetener. Otherwise, just drop him because I think he's just completely useless. Wide receiver-wise, never start a Jets receiver, especially without Jamison Crowder there. I think you can flex T.Y. Hilton and you can emergency flex Michael Pittman. With Paris Campbell out, Pittman's thrust into the number 2 role, and Hilton isn't playing very well, so there's room for Pittman to become the number 1 in the offense. On the screen right now, you'll see the wide receiver cornerback matchups. T.Y. Hilton going up against Quincy Wilson is a bit of an advantage for T.Y. Hilton because Quincy Wilson is very good. And Michael Pittman against I don't even know who that is, but Michael Pittman should eat him alive because I've never even heard of that dude. The Jets are just throwing out random names I don't even think are real people out there. Tight end wise, Chris Herndon is a clear-cut starting tight end, so I think he's streamable from that perspective. And Mo Alley Cox, the same thing. With Jack Doyle out, Mo Alley Cox is the clear-cut starting tight end. And they're both on teams with a lack of receiving options, so they should be good from that perspective. So I think both of them are streamable in this matchup, probably as like mid-tier tight end 2s, like tight end, 17 to 15 range for both of these guys is where I have them ranked. Next game, Cowboys and the Seahawks. This is a big one for fantasy production. They're my quarterback 1 and 2 on the week. Russ is my quarterback 1 on the week, and Dak Prescott's my quarterback 2 on the week. Running back wise, again. You start Chris Carson and you start Zeke Elliott. It looks like Chris Carson is back to his full workload with 20 touches in week 2 and a 63.5% snap share in the Seahawks backfield, which is something I was low-key worried about coming out of week 1 where he only got 6 carries. I thought there was a chance that they were going to use Carlos Hyde more on the ground than they did in week 2. So that's good news for Chris Carson. Wide receiver-wise, literally all 5 of these guys, the main wide receivers in this game, are top 25 receivers for me on the week. I think this game is going to be an absolute barn burner. It's the highest over-under on the week. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup. Likely one of these guys may disappoint you, but maybe not. Maybe if Dalton Schultz could piss off, then none of them disappoint you. But the matchups are as follows. CeeDee Lamb going up against Ugo Amadi. That should be an advantage Lamb. Amari Cooper against Shaquille Griffin, advantage Cooper. Michael Gallup against Quentin Dunbar. That one's a little bit close. If I had to guess, I would say Gallup is the guy that disappoints this week. But there's a chance that none of them disappoint. So on the Seahawks side of things, both of the Seahawks' top 2 receivers are top 10 for me on the week. Tyler Lockett going up against Jordan Lewis. Tyler Lockett's my wide receiver 8 this week. I think this is a Lockett week when last week it was a Metcalf week. Metcalf, though, going up against Cheeto Awuzie, I still think it's an advantage Metcalf. Tight end wise, Dalton Schultz, I think you can stream in this game. As I mentioned, I think if Gallup disappoints, Dalton Schultz probably had a good game and vice versa. And you sit all the Seahawks tight ends because in a potentially high-scoring game, as I mentioned with Schultz, it gives you a piece of the game and some exposure to it. But I don't really want to start him if I can help it. He's like a tight end 19 for me on the week. On to the next game. Lions at Cardinals. Quarterback wise, you can fire them both up. This is the second highest over under on the week at 54.5. Lions have been absolutely brutal against the run. Kyler should have an absolute field day on the ground in this one. And if Kenny Golladay plays, Stafford's a top 15 quarterback option for me. And this, if he doesn't, I think he's still streamable as a top 20 guy. Running back wise, Kenyon Drake, I think, is going to have a big bounce back in this game. He's like my running back, like 6 on the week, which is like 6 spots higher than consensus has him. I think he's going to just go hog wild against this defense. And DeAndre Swift is an emergency flex in this game. I think from Drake's perspective, I think he's one of the best buy lows in fantasy right now, because after going against 2 of the best run defenses in the NFL, the Niners, when they had everyone, were one of the best in the NFL. Now they don't, obviously, and then the Washington football team having Chase Young and all those guys up front, not a great matchup for Drake. But I think against the Lions, they're like one of the better run funnel defenses in the league, according to some of the metrics I've seen thus far. So Drake should have a huge bounce back game in this one. As far as the Lions running backs go, it's kind of gross still, but Swift is still the guy to own in this backfield. I don't want to start him if I can help it. He is still running the most routes with 13 of any running back on the Lions roster. Jared Small also tweeted this out shortly after the game. He's only running 34% of the snaps, though, which is why I don't want to start him quite yet. Even though he did get the most opportunities and from carries and targets, I'm still just holding Swift. Don't drop him. Don't trade him. Don't start him though either. I wouldn't be starting him if I can help it. He's more in that he's in like the top 40 running back range. If your other option's Frank Gore, then I would start DeAndre Swift. But other than that, you should probably have a better option to start. Wide receiver wise in this game, Golladay is expected to be back in this game. And if he is back, I would flex him, not start him necessarily, because he is coming off an injury. Obviously, he was like your 3rd round pick, so you might not have a choice but to start him. Marvin Jones as a flex option, especially if Kenny Golladay is back. I really like Marvin Jones in this game. And then and DeAndre Hopkins, you start him every game. Golladay, as I mentioned, I don't want to say he's an automatic start because he is coming off an injury, and he's likely going to be shadowed by Patrick Peterson as well if he plays. I feel comfortable starting Jones if Golladay is back and taking away Patrick Peterson. If Golladay doesn't play and Marvin Jones is the only guy, I don't want to start Marvin Jones. But if Golladay plays, I feel really comfortable starting him because Golladay is on the field to draw attention away. Plus, he's just taking away Patrick Peterson, as I mentioned. I'm not necessarily willing to start anyone other than Hopkins in the Arizona receiving core, but I guess you could emergency flex Kirk or Larry in a pinch. As you can see there, they have Kirk on Jeff Okudah, who's a rookie who didn't really have a good game in his first start. And then Darrell Roberts on Larry Fitzgerald. Probably shouldn't end well as also. But as you can see, DeAndre Hopkins just has like the best matchup on the field because he's just a stud. Tight end wise, TJ Hawkinson, I think it'll be interesting to see how TJ Hawkinson does with Kenny Golladay back. Whether because his involvement isn't that great. It's like just over 50% of snaps. Like he should be being involved a little bit more than that with Kenny Golladay out. And then never start a Cardinals tight end. Obviously, the Cardinals have not been the cake matchup that of tight ends that they were last year. So that is something to monitor with TJ Hawkinson. If you just assume that he's like, oh, he's playing the Cardinals, they're terrible against tight ends. That's not necessarily how it's worked thus far this season. On to the Bucs and the Broncos. Quarterback Tom Brady. I think you can start him in this game, but especially with Chris Godwin back, it definitely helps him out a lot. And then whoever starts for Denver, whether it's Blake Bortles who they're bringing in or Jeff Driscoll, you sit him. I think you don't want anything to do with the Bucs pass defense right now. They're playing with their hair on fire and they're just shutting down everyone. Brady, as I mentioned, should get back on track with Godwin coming back, but that sounded like a bunch of rhymes there, but this could be over early in this game. And I expect we see a heavy dose of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones in the second half. So I don't think Brady has like tremendous upside in this game because any upside that he has will probably be realized in the first half when it's still a close game. And then they're probably going to run away with it after that. Might get some defensive scores that limit Tom Brady's upside as well. I think running back wise, you flex Fournette and you can emergency flex Ronald Jones. And then you can start Melvin Gordon, even though it's a terrible matchup. I think the volume is too good to turn down here. He drew a tough schedule going up against the 2 best run defenses in the league, in my opinion, in back-to-back weeks in the Steelers and the Bucs. But receiving work for Melvin Gordon should help buoy him against Tampa Bay, as he might have a dud in this one, though. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. I wouldn't be playing him in any DFS lineups or anything like that. The Bucs backfield is still relatively muddy. I think the fantasy community just believes this is Leonard Fournette's job. Arians did mention saying about Leonard Fournette that he doesn't know if he knows the playbook well enough to be the starting running back. And while Arians' words haven't really meant too much yet, he has kind of been on track with what he said. So I don't think they're just going to thrust Leonard Fournette into a starting role. I think it's going to be kind of a split backfield again this week. But I mean, if Ronald Jones fumbles another snap or miss another blitz pickup, it's probably curtains on that running back job. And I'll definitely take that one on the chin for that, because I believe Ronald Jones was going to be an awesome running back this year. And he's kind of proven me wrong with the mistakes he's making and the fact that Arians is just willing to forgive. It seems weird that Arians is willing to forgive LaShawn McCoy for literally dropping a wide open touchdown when Ronald Jones fumbled the snap that was kind of half Brady's fault, and Ronald Jones is just like benched now. So on the screen right now, you'll see what the running back snap counts were. As you see, Leonard Fournette did outsnap Ronald Jones, and it wasn't even really all that close once the fumbled handoff happened between Tom Brady and Ronald Jones. Fournette assumed a way bigger role in the offense, outsnapping him 58% to 26% after that fumble. So I still think you can flex Fournette this week, and emergency flex Ronald Jones given the projected game script that they're going to see. But I still think the split will be closer than people think if they assume it's just outright Leonard Fournette's job. He's running away with this backfield. He's a 3-down workhorse like he was in Jacksonville. I don't think we're there yet. Maybe we get there, but I could anticipate Ronald Jones holding him off for a little bit longer. Wide receiver-wise, fire up both Bucs receivers as top 12 options, and I think you can flex Jerry Jeudy in this game with Cortland Sutton now out for the year. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans going up against Isang who? Like, Chris Godwin is going to smash in this game against Isang Bassi in the slot. And Mike Evans should have a great game against Michael Ojemudia as well. I think that if these two guys have a great game, obviously Brady is going to have a good game, which is why I think you can start Brady, even though I think this could be a run-heavy game script. These two guys could catch a long bomb touchdown each in the first quarter. And then it's a heavy dose of Leonard Fournette after that. But on the Broncos side of things, Jerry Jeudy going up against SMB. I mean, that's probably the best matchup on the field, I would say, because Dean and Davis have just been really good so far this year. But I've said don't fuck with the Bucs pass defense so far this year, because they look like they're like a top 5 pass defense in the league. But Jeudy should get volume, so I think you can start him if you need to. As far as the Bucs tight ends go, I don't really want to start any of them. But the two Bucs tight ends are both streamable in a pinch. The guy I would choose is OJ Howard because, I mean, like Gronk is droppable. Like he just is not involved. He looks like crap too. He looks slow. He looks sluggish. He's basically a 6th offensive lineman out there. So I wouldn't be streaming Rob Gronkowski. OJ Howard at least gives you big play opportunity, and he's just like a better athlete at this point in his career than Rob Gronkowski is. So that's why I would pick Howard as like a top 20 tight end. But I'd rather stream a guy like Logan Thomas or something over OJ Howard. Noah Fant is looking like the stud tight end he was drafted to be in the first round. And with Sutton out now, I think he's going to become a focal point of this offense, Noah Fant. And if I had to pick a guy, if someone's going to screw us this week on defense, it's going to be Noah Fant, not Jerry Jeudy, if I had to guess. So on to Sunday Night Football. We're almost done here. I know this was a long show, but we're getting through it. Quarterback-wise, Drew Brees, meh. And Aaron Rodgers start. I am very worried about Drew Brees. He had like an okay stat line against the Raiders, but I'm selling him if I can and capitalizing on the big name value if I can while he still has it, because this dude is washed. Like, I'm willing to bet that famous Jameis gets in there as the Saints starter at some point this season, because Drew Brees looks that bad, in my opinion. Like, he's missing layup throws. And Drew Brees is like the most accurate quarterback in NFL history. He should not be missing slant routes to Emmanuel Sanders and checkdowns to Alvin Kamara, which he was missing last Monday against Las Vegas. So if Jameis starts games, I mean, it's going to scare the crap out of me as a Bucs fan, because Jameis is a good quarterback who has a turnover problem. And if someone can fix it, it's Sean Payton in the Saints system. So that scares the crap out of me if Jameis is going to be the starting quarterback soon, which I expect to happen. Maybe I'm probably going to get some hate for that in the comments, just hating on Drew Brees, but he looks bad. Like, go watch the game in condensed form. Like, he doesn't look good. As far as Aaron Rodgers goes, I am willing to start Aaron Rodgers, but let's not pretend that the first 2 games of Aaron Rodgers' revenge tour were against the Vikings and Lions defenses. Like, the Saints have a good defense. Like, if Aaron Rodgers does this against the Saints, then I am fully going to buy in that this is the revenge tour that Aaron Rodgers is on. But the Saints are a really good defense. They are not the Lions or the Vikings, and I expect Aaron Rodgers to have a bit of a down game in this one. So he's like a top 15 quarterback for me, but he's not like a top 8 option like ECR has him. Running back-wise, you start Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara. And I would sit Latavius Murray in this one. The 15 rush attempts were a farce, as I suspected in week 1. I figured it was just a result that Latavius Murray was running better against the Bucs defense, and Alvin Kamara wasn't really running that good against them. So that's why I said just fade Latavius Murray this past week, and it kind of worked out that way with the 3 carries that he saw. On Aaron Jones, I have to take a bit of a victory lap here because I was a lot higher on Aaron Jones than a lot of people. And many people who I really trust their opinion, and I think they're great fantasy analysts, were off Aaron Jones this past season. And my thing is, I just don't want to bet against uber talented players. Are there 5 more running backs in the NFL that are more talented than Aaron Jones? Probably not. Like, it's not smart to bet against a guy that's that good. We could talk about regression this and regression that, but some dudes just find the end zone, and that's what Aaron Jones clearly does. And we want to give Matt LaFleur crap for a bunch of things, but he knows how to use Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones's role is secure. It's smart the way he's being used. He's being used as Alvin Kamara, as Austin Eckler, like 20 touches a game. Let him be super efficient. Let him stay fresh on 55% of snaps like he's playing. He's not playing 80% of snaps like David Johnson or like some of these other running backs. Aaron Jones is in a role where he can be fresh and he can be effective. So, and better yet, Aaron Rodgers trusts Aaron Jones, which we've seen as an actual narrative that actually proves to be true. Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams are the 2 guys he trusts most in this offense. And you can see that. Aaron Jones leads the league in red zone targets. He's a running back, and he leads the league over Mark Andrews and Darius Slayton and Mike Gesicki and Russell Gage, the guys that are up here, and Devontae Adams, his own teammate, who should be used heavily in the red zone. Like, Aaron Jones has 6 red zone targets in 2 games, which is just a crazy amount for a running back. So wide receiver-wise, you start Devontae Adams, even though he's likely going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore in this game. I think because of that, that makes Allen Lazard flex-worthy, even though the Saints' pass defense is a good one. I think Lazard could probably see some targets with Lattimore being glued to Devontae Adams. Emmanuel Sanders, I think you sit in this game because he's likely going to see Jair Alexander, maybe not as a shadow corner, but just as a projection from PFF. That's who they expect to have Jair Alexander on, is Emmanuel Sanders. Plus, 3 targets from the noodle arm last week isn't really an endorsement against one of the worst defenses in the league in the Las Vegas Raiders. If Emmanuel Sanders didn't perform last week, he's probably not going to perform in this game because the Packers defense is actually good. So I don't think he's going to be very good in this one. Tight end wise, I think you start Jared Cook. He had a bit of a down game target wise on Monday, but he should bounce back in this one. In the second highest projected advantage for a tight end against Christian Kirksey per PFF. Jared Cook should smash in this game, and then just don't start any tight ends on the Packers ever. All right, I'd like to talk about this last game a little bit more than I can, but frankly, the fantasy options are just so obvious in this game. Chiefs and Ravens, you start both quarterbacks because it's Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Running back wise, you start. I expect a down week on the ground again for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think he should be good from a receiving perspective. And then as far as the Ravens running back goes, I think you can flex both of them. But before this past week, Ravens offensive coordinator Greg Roman came out and said that there's no exact science to the Ravens backfield. It's just going to be a different guy every week, and we like to keep people guessing using a hot hand approach, which kind of favors J.K. Dobbins because he is going to be the hot hand more often than not because I think he's just the most talented running back in the backfield. So that does kind of favor J.K. Dobbins, but it does mean they're not just going to be like, oh yeah, like J.K. Dobbins is their starter. Because if they said something like that, J.K. Dobbins would be like a top 15 running back for me going into this game. As I mentioned, the rookie running back snaps that I showed for a guy like James Robinson, J.K. Dobbins at the very bottom of this with 31% of the snaps. So as I mentioned, hot hand works well for J.K. Dobbins as he's shown to be the most efficient back in this backfield. But I think it's likely going to take an injury to one of these 3, Gus Edwards, Ingram, or Dobbins, for any one of these guys to be an RB1 type, like every week starter. I think both of the main guys, Ingram and Dobbins, can be flexed most weeks. And especially this one, it's a good matchup, high scoring game, run funnel defense. So I do think you can flex both of these guys, but neither of them are going to be like top 15 options unless one of the other gets injured, I think. Wide receiver wise, I think, you start Tyreek Hill every week. And I think you can emergency flex Mecole Hardman if Sammy Watkins misses this game. And I think you can start Hollywood Brown in this game with relative confidence as well. I think this will be a high-scoring game for sure, but I think the receivers may not be the reason. As I mentioned last week for the Chiefs and Chargers game, I think this is another quintessential Travis Kelce game. I think Travis Kelce and CEH in the passing game are probably going to buoy the Saints offense along with Tyreek Hill, or not the Saints offense, the Chiefs offense. And then the Ravens-wise, I think it's going to be a lot of the Ravens running backs, Lamar Jackson on the ground, and Mark Andrews, like it usually is. But Hollywood Brown should have a solid game as he's going up against
L'Jarius Sneed, who's a 4th-round rookie. It's probably not going to end well. I know L'Jarius Sneed has 2 picks on the season already, but Marquise Brown's probably just going to absolutely wipe the floor with him. On the Chiefs side, as I mentioned, Sammy Watkins they have as a projected starter, but I don't think Sammy Watkins is going to play based on how early he left the game. That'll be definitely something to monitor with practice reports. Mecole Hardman going up against Marlon Humphrey isn't a good sign, but I mean, Marlon Humphrey has struggled thus far in the season. So hopefully Mecole Hardman can take advantage of him and maybe break a big play. Mahomes, for what it's worth, hasn't really thrown the ball downfield a lot this season, which is kind of strange. Hopefully that changes in this game for people who own Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and stuff. But for people like me who own a lot of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm actually kind of fine with him not throwing the ball deep. And then the tight ends, like obviously, like you start both Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. They're my top 2 tight ends on the week, and I don't anticipate that changing. So that was a long-winded matchup preview. These will probably get shorter as we approach bye weeks and all that kind of stuff. But if you enjoyed this video, as I mentioned, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the bell icon so that you're notified when we post videos and when we go live before primetime games and before the Sunday slate. Comment any start-sit questions down below, or if you want to, you can just save them for the live streams, and me and Danny will answer them there. Join the Discord as well, because you can get some of your questions answered in there as well. And we don't charge you guys for anything, so check out our affiliate links for Thrive Fantasy and Trophy Smack if you're looking to get a trophy for your league champion. We got some big things coming in terms of a sponsorship, so stay tuned for that. But without further ado, guys, take care and enjoy your Wednesday.